Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, looks like we got a good week for once. And this, it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. Alright, I'll admit when I was wrong. This wound up a slightly busier week than I expected. And I'm not complaining about it, especially given that it's a slate of new arrivals from a variety of artists taking advantage of Drake exits, and a lot of the songs are pretty good. I think the larger question will be whether or not they got sustainable traction, which is why I've compared this year so much to 2018. Big album bombs and songs with a lock on radio, they tend to stick around. The stuff that would normally get some traction in the midsection, gasping for air. This tends to translate to friction in the midsection and songs fading before their time, whereas our top 10, well, let's get into it. And our persistent number one being Choosing Texas by Ella Langley, and truthfully, I don't even see the serious challenger if it's not from a major name. It's dominant on streaming, sales, and still has pop radio traction. People apparently aren't sick of it, even as I pretty much am at this point. Granted, it had way longer to wear on me than I Knew It, I Knew You by Taylor Swift, which is a considerably worse song. It's now beating Ella Langley on the radio, and it's close on sales, but she's not beating that streaming margin. Speaking of which, Be Her by Ella Langley's holding at number 3, because even as it appears Nashville radio might be done with the song, and they're not cross-promoting it, the cowards, her streaming is incredibly stable, even holding off the advance from Drake and Janice STFU up to number 4, where the streaming is rock solid, but the radio growth has been kind of slow. I'll chalk its gains up to losses more from beneath it. Hell, I also think that's true for Man I Need by Olivia Dean up to number 5, which actually had a decently stable week on streaming and airplay, but any positional shift probably has more to do with the other Olivia seeing some losses. More on her in a bit. Then we got the slight spike for I Can't Love You Anymore by Ella Langley and Morgan Wallen at number 6, only gaining on streaming, but radio has been really slow and they're not cross-promoting this either. Even with the name recognition, I don't see any major leaps coming. Then we got the steady gains for Ariana Grande and Hate That I Made You Love Me holding at number 7. She's working the radio and streaming and seeing success, but looking at the numbers, the growth isn't quite significant enough to leapfrog anything. The margins are a little bit too wide right now. So again, we got positional creep, like Dracula by Tame Impala and Jenny up to number 8, because the radio just loves this, which has sparked a slight streaming revival. Now, a lot of these positional gains have come at the expense of, well, Drop Dead by Olivia Rodrigo falling to number 9, which is more the decrease of her positive streaming margin and the radio just not filling in the gaps. Not in decline, just not recovering fast enough. And the failure to push more than one song across radio, that's a knock I'll put on her promotional team. Honestly, it's an indictment against them since Sour. Finally, getting back into the top 10 is I Just Might by Bruno Mars. When your radio inertia just refuses to die and you just don't have much else, this is what happens. That's the result. So let's flip to our losers and dropouts, where, sure, in the latter group there were a few Drake cuts that are worth mentioning. Burning Bridges, Dust, Make Them Pay. But we also have a few songs that fell well short, like Pinky Up by Cat's Eye, In My Room by Julia Wolf, and especially Turn This Truck Around by Jordan Davis. Not saying any of these were particularly good or worth writing home about, but it's revealing that they just didn't penetrate longer term. And this becomes relevant when we take a look at our losers, especially as the remnants of Drake and Olivia Rodrigo's album bombs. Let's deal with the former first. Plot Twist hit 89, Bees on the Table with 21 Savage hit 90, What Did I Miss hit 98, and I'm Spent with Low Shimmy hit 100. And then going over to Olivia Rodrigo, What's Wrong With Me with Robert Smith of The Cure at 40, My Way at 42, You Plus Me Equals Love at 48, Begged at 51, Less at 55, Cigarette Smoke at 73, and Purple at 79. And whatever's left, Well, Swim by BTS has handily clinched its year-end list spot, falling down to 76. Hate How You Look by Josh Ross hit 62. And House Tour by Sabrina Carpenter slid back to 82. Looked like all those gains for her came too little, too late. So what's picking up traction in their stead? Well, it feels like our returns and gains are a swath of mixed blessings. With the returns, we did get Cowgirl by Shabuzi back at 94, but it came along with I Want You by Cody Johnson at 80, probably with a little bit of a boost coming off his album. And our gains, God, what a mess here. The best might be What You Need by Thames getting a nice edge to 44, with Beautiful Things by Megan Maroney in tow at 45. But is that really worth Don't Tell on Me by Jason Aldean at 36, or Hit the Wall by Gracie Abrams at 34? She had another song debut this week, we'll get to it. But are folks really that thirsty for their brand of mediocrity this year? Are folks really that desperate? Well, before we get more to her, we do have a reasonable list of new arrivals. Let's start off with number 99, No Need for Leavin' by Kameron Marlowe.
Wanna light this flame, baby, make you change your mind. Baby, take my hand, I know it's the deep end. I'll keep you from sinking, there's no need for leaving.
This is an odd case because I could have sworn I have heard of or covered Kameron Marlowe before, but according to my own archives, this is the first time that he has hit the Hot 100 in the long 7 years since he was a contestant on The Voice, got signed under Sony Music Nashville, and has put out 3 albums in the early 2020s, including a crossover single with Ella Langley, and this song produced by Austin Goodloe, who has actually worked on Dandelion. So call it mixed expectations going in, but listening to this, I actually hear some promise. The easy comparison is actually a more conventionally attractive and younger Chris Stapleton, as he's got some soulful firepower in his delivery, even if I think the production touches up his vocals a little bit more than I would advise. And for this sort of gently smoky torch song where he's trying to entice this person to actually stick around and hook up in this desperate chance to keep the fire going, it's a pretty easy sell, but I would keep it more organic. But I also remember a couple of years ago when You Should Probably Leave was a hit, that a colleague of mine highlighted that this sort of bluesy, soulful sound could wind up a little bit too slick and respectable, too tasteful for its own good, calling back to the late 80s and early 90s. And while I think Stapleton sidestepped that well enough, this absolutely fits near that lane, especially as the writing doesn't really add more details to flesh out the picture. But still, it's reasonably well executed. It's better than I expected. Yeah, I'll call it a good song. I'll take it. Number 87, Is It Cool by Steve Lacy featuring SZA.
You ain't gotta trust me to love me, baby. 'Cause I don't even trust myself.
Look, I'm still not the biggest Steve Lacy fan, but if he's getting the assist from SZA, and if it can help get Malcolm Todd off the Hot 100, I will take what I can get, even if it looks like this assist is pretty limited across the board here. Maybe she actually heard the song and realized the actual instrumental is a gloopy mess. The lumbering click of the percussion alongside the watery shudder of the synth melody, where the guitars sound so flattened and ugly, all of which seems to accentuate Steve Lacy's increasingly rough singing, and that's more they dump on the effects for the final vocals that doesn't save anything. Now, to Lacy's credit, that seems to kind of fit the arc and tone of the song, where he starts out flat out admitting that he never learned well enough to not cheat from his late father. The telling line is, "You ain't gonna trust me to love me." Yeah, cause I don't even trust myself. And sure, there's some pathos in the arc of realizing that he wants to take this seriously, and then should probably start trusting his own instincts, get over some of his own weird self-sabotage that drives him to make bad decisions. But man, not only does the process getting there sound bumpy as hell, there's another angle where it can come across as really disingenuous and self-serving, on the cusp of the same preening fuckboy energy that just wants to get laid, where SZA seems to see right through all this as she just wants to fuck as well. I guess the ugliness evens out. I don't know, the emotional dynamics of the song could be interesting, but the actual execution is as much of a headache as the process is bound to be. I want to be on Steve Lacy's side, I do, but this? No, it's not good. No thanks. Number 69, Piece of Your Love by Rod Wave.
I've been thinking about our future. Tell me, am I tripping? It's the drugs I'm taking or the cup that I'm sipping. Who won't war with us? Never been no victim. Only what we lost was to the system. Free all my brothers. Girl, you're fine as hell and your skin soft as butter. I tell my bro I love you in your eyes.
I've given up on hoping Rod Wave would develop as an artist. You know, structure a hook, clean up the production, and try something different in the content. It's been a lot of years and long albums and a lot of the same shit. Why would he bother to change? It seems to still work for him. So when I saw a song with one verse and very little structure outside of it, I thought I knew exactly what we were getting. And look, the chipmunk vocals, the crushing bass, the limited structure, it's all set up there. But there are a couple improvements that brought me back and I think are worth highlighting. The glossy throwback R&B pianos and watery twinkle support slightly better booming percussion, and Rod Wave is a good enough performer to make use of production that actually feels bigger, gives him more space, even if he's actually underplaying a little more in his delivery and trying to get tender to get just a piece of her love, where he's trying but not fully succeeding to win her over. Some of that loneliness is still there. And for a part of me, yeah, that's gonna be enough. It's the most I've liked a Rod Wave song in some time. It is good, I'll stand behind it. Might even check out that upcoming album. But I do think subtle tweaks to just refine the formula shouldn't be enough to fully get me there. Am I that easy? I'm still looking for him to be great. This is not quite that. Number 68, Radio by Future.
For the radio, it's not for the radio. What it do? It's not for the radio. And she bad all the way down, spoiler all around. The biggest nigga in the town, even when I'm not in town. A lot of niggas want the spot when I don't even want the crown. Already legendary and never trying to talk about it.
As someone who's come around to appreciate Future a little bit more the past several years, I feel like there's still a ceiling on him, where even after I gave flowers to the We Don't Trust You duology, he followed it with a third album in 2024 that year and squandered a lot of my goodwill. So I got a lot of healthy skepticism about the new album or any new single, especially in the gesture towards maturity when the song is structured more like an extended freestyle. But color me a little bit pleasantly surprised. This feels like a positive step. I'll give it to him. The chalky whirs from Wheezy and the subtle percussion change-ups that keeps the momentum shifting, that's a little promising. Even if the final quarter of the verse, Future's flow, doesn't quite stick, but his melodic hook is decent. And I actually think the content is a little better too, where Future realizes his desire for introspection and keeping it low-key doesn't really fit in the braggadocious radio climate, or just in the streets where every brag will give him respect but makes him a target. The walking contradiction gives a little bit of teeth to Future's brooding as he largely stays away from the brand names this time, and you can tell that he's feeling more responsibility than he normally lets on, especially given those who have tangibly ripped him off. Wait, Cardi! And I don't know, maybe the album The Real Me has a shot to live up to its title. You know what's promising? It's good. Let's see where he goes next. I could be on board. Number 60, The Time of My Life by Benson Boone.
Day's a party, every night's a nightmare, wishing you came along.
My first immediate thought when I saw the song title is, he totally would pull something from Dirty Dancing. But then I remembered that Benson Boone was born about 15 years after that movie first came out. So who knows where this could possibly go. But after hearing it, man, I kind of wish he actually tried pulling from the movie, because the other side of the Benson Boone conversation was the thought that he would get replaced as soon as Harry Styles came back around. And well, Harry's stylistic pivot made it clear that probably wasn't going to happen. Benson Boone has his market. This sounds a lot like something Harry Styles would have churned out in the late 2010s. The soft focus, revving glam rock, cushion and quivering reverb and acoustic guitar, until the latter overdubs and electric guitar welled up around him, especially alongside an admittedly well-produced rhythm section in the drums and bass that can help that final hook feel pretty huge. But we gotta get to the Benson Boone at the core of all this, and to be frank, while the reverb helps him sound better, he just can't quite sell it for me. It's the difference between vocal range and vocal presence, especially if you want to compare the song to, say, Sign of the Times by Harry Styles. I have plenty of issues with him, but he has some of that weathered charisma to command a mix, whereas Boone's got the range in order to hit the notes, but feels lacking some of the charisma and texture to match all that pomp and circumstance. Granted, some of this is also a factor in the writing, which is all about his success and his fame and the endless party that never quite feels as satisfying as he's still overwhelmed with angst over some kind of breakup. It's very interesting between this and Beautiful Things that the palpable sense of misery and desperation in the face of things that seemingly are going well when he just wants to be loved, that's kind of a running theme. But the framing and the writing is so basic, it's hard for me to really get on board. Just add a little bit more detail, make it distinctively you. So yeah, Benson Boone has made far worse than this. The production value eases back some of the flop sweat, but I really struggle to call it all that good. All I'm saying. Number 54, Look at My Life by Gracie Abrams.
Another bad time, a new spiral every night, bawling my eyes out, no, but I'm so fine. Yeah, I might just shut up and drive, hope I don't crash and blow out the headlights. My nightmare actualized, got what I wanted, it doesn't sit right.
So yeah, Gracie Abrams' next album is dropping in just over a week. I expect she might get an album bomb, and I keep wondering when those 15 minutes are gonna run out. The longer she continues to rack up minor hits, the less I like or have patience for her, especially as she seems to be playing into some of the nascent backlash around fame that's spinning up. So maybe that sets me up to be less than charitable when this new song's all about her struggles with fame, that it's not all it's cracked up to be. And what makes me all the more frustrated is that there are pieces of the song that kind of work. I like the softer patter and tempo that Aaron Dessner's production creates. Feels frantic in the right way, even if the horn feels really flimsy against the synth backdrop, and Dessner really could have afforded to give the production some louder presence. That's been a niggling issue in its work outside of the National. And hell, I think Abrams doesn't have as much emotional range, but the overdubs and vocal presence at least shows her trying. And while the writing is perhaps the most basic way to approach all this concept, I can imagine this kind of working for a different artist who commits to the bit. The problem is that it's Gracie Abrams, and with the Carolyn reference on the pre-chorus to her photographer, it snaps you back to her reality, that she's a Nepo baby with limited talent but tremendous connections in order to become a pop star. That's not a nightmare actualized, perhaps a dream that had more components than you expected. And if she's genuinely insecure that everyone's going to eventually see through her pose, I'm sorry, she doesn't have nearly as far to fall, especially as the sense of stakes across the song feels really wonky. There's no sense of darkness in her delivery or production, and when the scenes described are just light drug use and alienation and insecurity, just winds up feeling like the Disney-fied version of herself, capturing the aesthetic to grasp that emotional weight, but missing the fine details and the craft that would make it work. In other words, Gracie Abrams is really her father's daughter, and this isn't any good. Next. Well, finally, number 30, My Body Isn't Ready by Sombr.
Try to be the person you're expecting, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
I think someone needs to take Sombr's phone away. I saw the title of the song and my stomach just fell. I don't need him to make playing to already dated memes a thing in his writing. It reflects bad instincts as a songwriter if he's finally moving on from that breakup. Or I don't know, maybe it's Taylor Swift's cornier influences rubbing off on him now that they're hanging out more. Because the real shame here, once you get past that eye-rolling line, I like this a lot. Again, the sentiment behind the song is legit great. Now at the start of something new and real, he's feeling tentative and really hesitant because he's still doing the hard work to rebuild his self-perception post-bad breakup. Especially the best face that he's putting on to get with this girl and trying to live up to that, as we all do at the start of relationships. And he is longing for youthful days where he just couldn't have to care. But he's also feeling a real spark there. He wants to see it through. and the tension between those impulses plays out well, especially given his own newfound fame and wondering whether or not she's just liking him for that. And not for nothing, there could be a little body dysmorphia subtext playing into this as well. The kid has looked kind of emaciated for a long time when he's been in the spotlight, and maybe if he feels like he looked closer to his best, he'd have more confidence that he could feel as full as his mix. And that's relevant because the production here is once again really damn great. The vocal overdub is building off the blend of pianos and acoustic guitar, where you could make a comparison to 70s glam again, but there's a little 90s Britpop here in the swell and scope, with a subtle switch up with the electric guitar into that final hook. It feels almost inspired. So yeah, he kept sticking the landing. This is a really damn good song. Hopefully will become another hit, probably close to great. The title of the song and that one line is bad. Everything else really works, and yeah, you know what? Coming out of a good week, it is the best of them. I don't even think it's close. The worst, honestly, I think the week is well above average, and Gracie Abrams nearly had it. I gotta give it to Steve Lacy and SZA on production alone. Even if the idea underscoring the song had promise, the execution just falls apart. Next week might wind up a little bit slow unless Ken Carson or, God forbid, Madonna see album impact from out of nowhere. Stay tuned for that possibility. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.